Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to RCI TV for round 5 of the British Masters. We've headed out to each of the circuits in the United Kingdom for the championship, except for one, and we arrive at Brands Hatch for the first time for round 5 of the season. We'll be heading to Donington Park for a special 90-minute finale next week. But for this Monday night, you have me back alongside Jesse Lee for 60 minutes of action tonight. Jesse, it's great to be back on the British Masters finally after missing 3 rounds in a row, and it's great to have you alongside me again for a weekly championship.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure. It feels like old times, Ryan, if I'm completely honest with you, getting the old gang back together. And man, what a championship this has been. We talked briefly about what it's been like for these drivers. It's not quite over yet. 2 rounds left to go. Today could go a long way in determining our 2 champions.
It definitely could go a long way in determining our champions as well. And speaking of, we can have a bit of a look at the championship standings for the season so far, heading into round 5. We are 4 rounds down. The drop round, of course, that we have in the season very much in effect. And you can see Daniel Austin's leading the way with 102 points in the Aston Martin. He is the lone Aston Martin up there in the top 4. He's 6 points ahead of Venture Rakhmonov, who's keeping it close there up at the top. And well, a poor race for Austin's tonight could definitely put Rakhmonov well in the driving seat. Mullard and Kuizma, though, in a battle for 3rd place. Then it's a bit of a gap back to Kumpu, who sits in a bit of no man's land on his own. Further back is Kingston Lee on 43 points, though. And then it's so tight between Daly, Van Kampen and Boardman, 38, 36, and 36. And then also don't forget Jan Yeo down there on 33 points as well, rounding out the top 10. Incredibly close between all 4 of those drivers. Moving on to the second page, though, Alexander Witzel on 29 points has an 8-point gap over Martin Lawrence. John Aracer on 19 and Lee King-McGee on 15. Justin van der Linde on 0 points. And, of course, Raphael Hull, Sean Drisdale, Daniel Walker and Stefan Johnson no longer participating in the championship. But, of course, that's not all, because we have the silver class out here tonight as well. And it is Tom Shipston that leads the way quite significantly. However, if he has a poor race tonight and Ethan Scott can take advantage of that, maybe pick up a win, it could turn the entire table on its head. But he has to watch out for Rebecca as well, as he's done not too bad to stay right on the back. And the same for Laurie McLaughlin as well on 71 points. Then we have a big gap back to Kwiatkowski, who is 5th place, only 1 point ahead of Nicole Fox, doing a fantastic job this season. Then 35 points for Niels June. Alan Knight on 26 is the same as Thibaut Roskam in 9th place. And Bart Matcher in the McLaren 650S, the lone 650S, rounding out the top 10 of the silver standings on just 22 points. And then with the second page, we have Lev Stevenson on 18, just a point ahead of Daryl Sutcliffe on 17. Jake Boswell, 9 points to his name in the Bentley Continental, and 0 points apiece for Chris van der Linde and Jurian Zoechi so far this season. Grim Lilith, Merlin Calvanaro, Alexander Borodai, Matt Campbell, and Masvidas Aliakononis have no points left to their name this season after they have pulled out of the championship. So, with the championship standings done, we did unfortunately miss qualifying, but we can give you a little bit of a recap as to exactly what happened, and it is not the championship leader on pole position. In fact, the pole position points going away of the chaser, Jesse Lee. It was exactly what Rakhmonov needed to start his evening. He's grabbed those ever-important pole position points that he'll be carrying towards his total points tally for this evening. What he needs to do now is not just get through turn 1 ahead of Austin's, he needs to finish the race in front of the Aston Martin as well.
He sure does. And also keep in mind, too, you get points for having the fastest lap. Could that be Vincey's today? Could be a day that sees almost a dead tie at the top of the board. It almost makes you wonder what would happen if Rachanov would have not had that bad race in race number 1. Well, it probably still would have been a drop round that would have made them just about even. That's how close they have both been. Could today go the way of the 24? I think it just might.
It's definitely something that they'll be looking for, isn't it? And plenty of other drivers down the field that'll be hoping for more points here today. Brands Hatch, a very, very tricky circuit. And, well, the British Masters in general it is a collection of tricky circuits. Donington's not particularly easy, although it is one of the easier circuits on the calendar. Alton Park and Snetterton are their own set of challenges, but I think Brands Hatch is a circuit that you kind of treat it like Marmite. You love it or you absolutely hate it, because it is difficult to drive around here. If you're not entirely familiar with the circuit, if you're not hooked up with it, that turn one and, well, middle forest sector that you have through Dingle Dell as well can be absolutely terrifying if you're not comfortable.
No, it's absolutely the case. Going into Sheen's probably one of my biggest nightmares racing around this track. Sterling's also has been a bit of an issue for me in the past as well, and we see a lot of that from the drivers, and probably underrated is Sterling's. A lot of cars going off into that particular left-hander and making a mess of it. Of course, inviting any sort of passing down clearways and Clark is a big issue. So we're going to see that today. You're going to see cars going off the circuit, front, right, and center, especially through some of the tighter sections as well. Bramhill Bend comes to mind surely. Will we see track limits today? Will we see penalties for that? It's a possibility, but this track is known to be somewhat self-policing. It's going to be a fun race, though, seeing them get 2x2 around here. An old world circuit that has not lost any of its charm from however many years ago we started racing here. Seems like forever. The world was definitely in black and white. Ryan Gill, always a treat to be back here in Brands Hatch.
Yeah, it is a circuit with plenty of history to its name as well, and that doesn't just go on four wheels as well. This circuit has hosted many, many great events on two wheels. Of course, motorbike racing, one of the most popular events that they have all year round here at Brands Hatch with the British Superbikes Championship, but it also has plenty of other national series that come here. British GT, of course, features out here, the British Touring Car Championship, and of course, probably one of the mainline events of the year, GT World Challenge Europe, starts its sprint season at Brands Hatch. And, absolutely iconic event and a very, very difficult circuit to start the season at. It was great to go and see them out there myself. Got the chance to go and see them at Brands Hatch for the first time. But all these drivers here tonight, they're in a very different situation to the GT World Challenge drivers. They don't have two 60-minute races to worry about. They don't have driver swaps to worry about. They don't have any Audis or Mercedes to worry about that might potentially take a win here tonight. They just have to worry about their fellow British manufacturers. But they do have one mandatory pit stop here tonight, Jesse Lee. 25 seconds is the minimum pit stop time. So tyres are on the table for any of them that want to take the extra 5 seconds. And that could spice up strategy here tonight.
Yeah, it absolutely certainly could. And I think if you slide your tires, which you are prone to do here at Brands Hatch, that might be one of those opportunities to come in, take an extra 5 seconds, get new tires. The most anxious point in any race weekend, the time right before the green flag. Ryan Gill, take us away.
2x2 then, the whole field goes down towards turn one. They're lining up, waiting for the green flag to drop, and it does. 60 minutes of racing underway here at Brands Hatch. We go down towards Paddock Hill Bend for the first time at racing speed, and it's Rakinov on the inside line. He's going to take the initiative and make sure that Austin's doesn't have a look on the outside line, going into Druids for the first time as well, and the McLaren is nice and tight on the apex. Not going to give the Aston Martin driver any chance, and it looks like we have got away fairly cleanly through the first couple of corners. We're hoping, and so will the head stewarding team here tonight, that it stays clean. I do see the number 46 has gone off, and I believe the 970 started from the pit lane. The 127 has also found itself in some strife, but up at the front, it is Rakinov who is chasing away for that championship lead. He leads through Austin's at the moment, but don't discount Mullard in the third place car at the moment in the 77. He could make this interesting as well.
Tom Shipston doing bits here, trying to make up for the qualifying effort, trying to get back a spot. Look at this, maybe thinking about taking it too wide through here. They are going to with the Aston Martin in the background. I don't think they did go through there too wide by virtue of there not being a local waved yellow in that sector. Oh, but speak of the devil, there we have one a bit further back, the 612, and it appears to be the 5 car getting involved. That's Bart Macha, who has just had a frustrating championship. Unfortunately, that returns here very early on lap 1.
Yeah, Bob Mancher's had a difficult time out in the McLaren 650S, and here we're going to get a little bit of a replay. This is what happened to Bart Mancher. You can see that car, very defined shape, and oh, Aston Martin into the back, and that looks like, which car is that exactly? That's the 612, isn't it, of Justin van der Linden. that's gone into the back of Bart Matcher. The stewards will be looking at that one to see, who they find at fault, and well, we'll leave it up to them to make those decisions. This is Nicole Fox, though, who has done a fantastic job at the silver class this season. She's 6th in the championship right now, but sitting 3rd in class at the moment. And, well, Shipston hasn't had a great start, Jessie Lee. Qualified on pole in the silver class, but definitely not leading the silver class.
Yeah, certainly the 123, they have absolutely had a stonking start. They've stormed into the lead, and they've got Nico Kuzma in between them and the silver championship leader. It's no time to panic if you're Tom Shipston. You don't really need to beat the 123, so to speak. You only need to beat Ethan Scott in the 34, and of course, Ethan Scott's back in 4th place in the running. You talked about Nicole Fox. She has done such a good job this season, mixed it up, not had quite the finishes she would have preferred to have. Obviously, there were a couple of incidents I think were completely out of her control. Her best finish, of course, 4th a couple of rounds ago, but looking so good so far in a podium position. How good? Well, that'd be a shot in the arm.
Definitely would be. Looking a bit further back, this is Laurie McLaughlin at the moment in the McLaren, just chasing down the Aston Martin and Matthew Kingston Lee in the 555. Has definitely made some good progress this season in the pro class, and, well, running up in the top 10 overall as it stands at the moment. And here we see Nicole Fox. She's going to go side by side, and is that John Eraser that's just up in front? I believe it is, and I'm not sure if that was John Eraser getting past or if that was Nicole Fox trying to get past John Eraser, but the two McLarens going toe-to-toe there at the moment, but nothing particularly bad coming out of it, and that'll be something that Nicole Fox will want to carry into this race in a good position right now. Like I said, 3rd place would be a best result of the season. Don't want to get involved in a car accident with another car in a different class to you at this stage. And, well, wants to ideally avoid something throughout the course of the race. But looking further up towards the top, 1.4 seconds between the front two. Rakinov has just started to pull away from Austin's, and, more importantly, Jessie Lee has the fastest lap of the race so far, even though we're only a few laps in.
Well, we theorized about it. We talked about it even before we went live tonight about what Rechinov needed to do to get into this championship fight, to make it a winner-take-all final round at Donington Park, the 90-minute finale next week. This is exactly what Vincey needed. The pole position, the fastest lap in the race win, and the more and more you pull away from Austin's, that makes the 4-1-3 obviously, it helps you insurance-wise, but it also disheartens them a little bit as well for the chase. Listen to this car, Nico Kuzma's car, just absolutely thundering down, and Paddock Hill Ben, and trying to get in front of the lead silver car. It's no easy task. Of course, the 123, they don't want to give up this spot. Kuzma, though, needs to. They're in P5. They need to get up there, fight with Boardman, because obviously everybody here's in the line. You can't see Andy Boardman for the 123, but there definitely is just there in the distance.
Yeah, Nico Kuzma wants to get past the silver class driver because that's where his goal is, right in front of him. Of course, he said as well, Zoe Toshek doesn't want to let past the number 12 McLaren, because that means that then Shipston is just, well, one car behind them. So it's kind of a situation that damned if you do, damned if you don't. You have a car that might be a bit quicker, and they've lost it. The McLaren's lost it through the corner, coming through Sheen Curve and into the barrier. There's going to be some damage on that 1-2-3, and they've given up the lead in silver to Shipston through doing so, and that's going to be some damage that'll have to be repaired, I believe, in the pit stop. Just catching the back end of that towards the replay. Unfortunately not able to catch it entirely, but it just looked like they might have clipped the curb on the inside, Jesse, and if you clip it too hard, that unsettles the car, and away she goes.
Well, Jordan Zodaway had a fantastic race going, but unfortunately it's all come undone. That's going to be significant damage. That is going to be affecting the aero balance of that car, not only the speed. Wonder if any damage was done to the tires, but certainly the bodywork in rough shape now, and that has given the silver lead over to Tom Shipston. That is not good news for Ethan Scott, who was the biggest Jorian fan up to that point. But now Tom Shipston leads in the silver class. Vincey Rachinov continuing to gap Austin's. It's 2.4 seconds the gap. It was 1.5 the previous lap. Absolutely putting in the lap times is the driver of the 24 McLaren. Mullard, by the way, in the 77, he's been so consistent, hasn't quite got the victories as the top two competitors have done, but Ben Mullard has been up there all season and now threatening for that P2 spot.
Yeah, threatening for that P2 spot, and that's exactly what Rakhmonov will want Mullard to do. Austin's, of course, won't be too happy about that at all. Kuzma promoted up into 5th place from Zoetwej's accident that they caused on their own, so that puts Kuzma now right into contention to chase down Andy Boardman, and chase down Andy Boardman he is. Look at the little train of McLarens that we have here, and you kind of get the feeling that these McLarens are being towed along by Mullard, and this will be the problem for Austin's at the moment. He'll be looking in his mirrors. He can see the McLaren of Rakhmonov almost 3 seconds down the road now, and he can see a train of McLarens under a second behind him. He's going to be looking backwards more than he is forwards, Jesse, and when that starts to happen, you do start bleeding time quicker and sooner rather than later.
Yeah, that's why I tell my drivers in a race like this, just don't even look in the mirror. I know that people are chasing you, and I know you want to know how good you're doing versus them, but it is not important. The important thing is making lap time. It's the same thing when people hot lap and they have the delta up on the screen because they want to know how good or bad they're doing. It is a distraction. The same thing with the mirror. And Austin's too at this point will be thinking, well, I'm in an Aston, they're in a McLaren. Am I in the wrong car for this? Do I even stand a chance? But of course you do, Austin's. You're in front of them right now. You got to get very defensive. But I'm going to tell you something else about this train as well. Once Mullard gets there, and if Austin's somehow goes wide a little bit, or maybe Mullard puts Austin's in a bad spot, this whole train could end up getting by them.
Yeah, Brands Hatch is one of those circuits where if you make a mistake or you get overtaken by someone, it can easily lead to a chain reaction, and that's one of the, issues that you have on some of the old school circuits. And, well, Jake Boswell out here in the Bentley, he's in the silver class this season. He's chasing down Ethan Scott, and we have another bit of a train here as well, but this time it looks like an Aston Martin at the front of it, followed by 2 McLarens, and then Jake Boswell just on the end in the Bentley, trying to make up as many places as he can at the moment. And Jake Boswell running the lovely CMR livery in that car for this season. It is nice to see some of the in-game liveries that come out every now and then, and well, not doing too bad in the number 47 Bentley as well. That gap, though, by the race leaders up to 3.5 seconds at the moment. You just feel, Jesse Lee, at this stage, it might change after the pit stops if maybe Austin wants to get some new tires, or perhaps maybe going through for a pit stop is just like a mental reset. But it feels at the moment,
that's the mistake I was talking about.
It feels at the moment that Austin's just does not have the confidence in the car that the rest of the McLarens do. There's going to be side-by-side contact. Andy Boardman's going to get through. Kuzma's going to take the opportunity to get through on Mullard as well, and there you go. It's like you said, one mistake can easily lead to another.
That's not what I thought the Alpha SimSport driver had in mind. I thought they had Austin's dead to right. Austin's ran off the track a little bit. Mullard got almost up next to him, but of course Austin's going the long way around the circuit, had the momentum, and that did nothing but slow Ben Mullard up, and that allowed Boardman and Kuzma through. Kuzma's got to be loving this. Nico's loving it. They were in 6th place a little while ago, trying to figure out how to get around the silver leader, and somehow they find themselves into 4th place, and they haven't really had to do anything. Contact here! Martin Lawrence is going to force, who is that? Nico Kumpu off the racetrack there.
Yeah, Martin Lawrence in the old Bentley, mind you. We obviously make a point of mentioning that. That's not the new Bentley Continental. Well, not the new Bentley, the 2018 Bentley Continental. I think that's the 2015 one or 2016 one. And Jake Boswell was having a little bit of a look there, and it didn't quite materialize either. Plenty of battles going on around. I have been told by the head steering team that there will be some penalties coming our way for the lap 1 shenanigans that we saw going on. We haven't quite had those dished out yet, but we should be expecting them shortly. I think they're just trying to get through all the lap 1 incidents first, Jesse Lee, before they post those. And, well, from what I can hear, it's going to be a few people taking a trip down pit lane.
Yeah, I think this is a new thing that they do from time to time. It depends on who the head steward is, of course, where they try to do all the lap 1 incidents in one go, and they try to post them in succession. Normally it's a floodgate after that, of course, and of course hearing that there might be multiple drive-through penalties. I think certainly there's a case we could make based on something we saw for one of those drive-through penalties without any sort of question. As you would say, Mr. Gill, a slam dunk. But beyond that, I'm quite curious what other things they have that were quite that serious. Of course, they'll keep us informed, and we'll take a look at that once we get there. Look at this. This is the look from Lori McLaughlin, the Gray Space racing car, looking back at Ethan Scott. Ethan Scott here is trying to take away P3 in class.
Yeah, trying to take away P3 in class at the moment, that the McLaren having absolutely none of it. And just looked up ahead, and McLaughlin has a 3.2 second gap to Nicole Fox, so no progress really being made there by the number 7. Nicole Fox kind of just being dragged along with John Eraser at the moment, doesn't seem to be making too many moves on the 699, kind of just happy and content to sit behind the pro car at this point. And I suppose you would be if the cars behind aren't making any inroads on you. You won't be too bothered about them, and you'll just be happy to, you know, sit behind one of the pro cars, even if they are a tad slower than you. We can see some of the cars towards the further back end of the grid, and now here is Andy Boardman, who we've seen him get past Mullard. It was a rather physical contact between the two of them. We don't know what the stewards will have to say about that one yet, but you'd have to think that Daniel Austin's might be a bit concerned. He's seen how, you know, elbows out Andy Boardman can get. We do know that Andy Boardman doesn't like to take many prisoners when he gets nice and scrappy with people, and might just be a case for Austin's today. Just try and take whatever you can from this race, but he won't want to, you know, lose too many positions, because he'll just keep gifting points and gifting a lead to Rakhinoff. But right now, he just does not have the pace.
No, he certainly doesn't have the pace right now. Keep in mind, Austin's worst finish of the year is only 3rd place. That's currently his drop round. Every driver gets a drop round. It's the round where you scored the least amount of points. And for Austin's, he's not finished off the podium all season, but he must have seen what happened between Kuzma, Boardman, Mullard in the background, and he must know that they're willing to get their elbows out. And Austin's, of course, trying to be the cork in the bottle, trying to be defensive here, doing a good job of it, mind you, as well. Even with the moment that they had, not yielding any positions thus far, but you got to know that Boardman, Kuzma, and even Mullard, who's still on the tail end of this train, they're not going to wait. If they see an opportunity, they're going to go for it. If they're willing to bang fenders with each other, they're not going to hesitate to do it with you either. But it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation from Austin's right now. And Daniel's got some decisions to make here. That pit stop can't come soon enough for that 413.
Yeah, it can't come soon enough. You might say as well, it could be one of the reasons he's slow. We've seen it before, that drivers maybe just don't have the tyre pressures quite right for the car, so sometimes they'll come in, they'll get that pit stop done, they'll do the tyres, try and fix it up, and we know how, you know, difficult some of these cars and how off pace a driver can be if maybe the pressures aren't exact. It is quite a warm day here, 21 degrees ambient, 29 on track, as we just see Jake Boswell giving a little bit of a love tap onto Matthew Kingston Lee. As you can see, Martin Lawrence filling the mirrors, though. It's new Bentley versus old Bentley, and, well, I rather think that Martin Lawrence wants to get past Jake Boswell sooner rather than later, and despite the fact he's in the old Bentley, you wouldn't put it past Martin Lawrence to get this move done soon.
It's an interesting fight here. Of course, Jake Boswell, the RCI's own Jedi, bumping the back of the best name in sim racing, and I was wondering, I was like, oh, I was like, did Jake mean to do that? And then I looked up in the mirror and noticed that Martin Lawrence was filling up the entire mirror, and I'm like, oh, I get it. Jake didn't have any room there. It was nice, tightly compact, like a can of sardines going through Druids that time. But I thought for a second that there might have been a little bumper cars there going on. There might have been, but 45 minutes left in the race. The penalties are coming out quite fast now. And you may have seen some of the drive-thrus come through on the screen, and they look a little something like this. Lap 1, turn 2, involving cars 5 and 46. Drive-through for car 5, forcing the 46 off track, resulting in a takeout position not returned. Lap 1, turn 3, between the 19, the 47, and the 127. Drive-through for car 19 for taking out the 127 via contact with the 47. Lap 1, turn 6. This is the incident we saw between the 612 and the 5. Drive-through for car 612 for taking out car 5. And on lap 3, turn 3, an incident between the 699 and the 314, deemed a racing incident for minor contact. Thoughts on all that, Ryan?
A bit more scrappy than I was hoping for. But to be honest, it sounded like, that whilst there was quite a few penalties that were dished out, it didn't seem like it was, it wasn't a majority of the field involved. Just seemed to be some isolated incidents.
Two of those drive-throughs were involved half the same cars. I just noticed.
So it's. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's too bad. I mean, obviously the stewards would have hoped for a cleaner lap one, and wouldn't everyone, but yeah, it didn't seem too bad. In and amongst all that, though, Jake Boswell did manage to find a way past Matthew Kingston Lee, and now that puts Kingston Lee into the clutches of Martin Lawrence and Yan Yeo. Both look very, very good at the moment, although Kingston Lee maybe going to have a look here on Jake Boswell. Jake Boswell didn't exactly get a great exit coming out of Clark Curve, and now just not going to quite have enough pace, though, for Matty Kingston Lee to have a look around the outside or switch back onto the inside, and now that puts the old Bentley of Martin Lawrence well and truly in the picture. All over the back of that Aston Martin, and it is great to see the old Bentley out here. As much as I do give Bart Matcher and Martin Lawrence some grief for choosing the older cars, it is great to see them out here for, a championship like this, because we do have only British manufacturers in this series, but it's great to see some of the older British cars representing in their manufacturers as well. And this hasn't changed too much, by the way. Austin's still ahead of Boardman, Koizma and Mullard. They haven't changed position. They've all kept relatively the same, but can Austin's do this for 42 minutes? I don't think so. That's going to be a mistake. There's contact between the two of them. Andy Boardman getting a bit physical, and now Koizma, is he going to try and take advantage?
He is going to
ahead. He's already got ahead of Boardman. Is he going to get ahead of Austin's as well? He's going to have to go the long way. And he's not quite going to get it done. Don't touch the grass. The corner drags you out so wide, and now he's on the outside line. Is he going to try and get it? Will he have the chance? He's going to go right around the outside here at Paddock Bill Bend. Can he get it done? No, just going to have to slip in behind. But he will get the position on Andy Boardman. Going to have to defend it, though, on the inside line, and does so well.
This is some excellent driving by everybody involved. Austin's, Koizma, Boardman, Mullard, the lot. Tom Shipston, by the way, has joined the back of this pack, and if I was his driving coach right now, I'd say, son, do not get involved. You don't need anything that these guys are selling. You're in the best possible position you could be in. Just be far enough away from this in case there is contact that you can drive through it. What an excellent defense by Daniel Austins. I thought it was done and dusted, and it wasn't. Somehow surviving again. The second mistake from the 413, and he was able to save it. But what about this time? Nico Koizma's not messing around. He's going to go a little bit wide. Andy Boardman down the inside. Boardman might have a shot here to take back that spot. Remember, Boardman got stacked up, and Koizma got through, and now Koizma drops the spot back to Boardman, and everything goes back to the way it was one lap ago. And this man driving the Ground Zero racing car has to be scratching his head. What do? Do I race them? Do I back off and give up time to Fox, who is coming, by the way? What do I do here? Mercifully, some of the cars have come in. I believe that's a 77 Alpha Sim Sport car of Ben Mullard is in the pit lane. Too crazy for his blood.
I was going to say one of the drivers that would be looking forward to this a lot is Nicole Fox, because whilst all this scrapping was going on, John Aracer and Nicole Fox were getting closer and closer and closer, and here goes Martin Lawrence to try and go around the outside of Matthew Kingston Lee. That's not quite going to work at Paddock Hill Bend. They're going to come up to Druids, and he's going to be forced to tuck back inside. But Nicole Fox would have been looking forward to that, because that would have just helped John Aracer catch up, and of course John Aracer is pulling Nicole Fox along with him. So they would just be catching up, and for Shipston, that would not be a good situation to be in, because he's been comfortably ahead of Nicole Fox for the majority of this race, but then all of a sudden has a pro car right on the back of his tail, and then the second place silver car right behind. And Nicole Fox has looked very, very good today. She's looked comfortable in second place at the moment and has very, very good pace, lapping quicker than John Aracer, or just as fast. And here we go. There's been a mistake from Austin's. Boardman has got through, and Koizma was trying to take advantage of the situation as well, but just couldn't quite pull it off, and now goes slightly wide. And here comes Shipston.
Here comes Shipston.
Is he going to get involved in this, or is he just going to hang back? Looks like he's going to hang back for now.
Oh, but he can't do that too much. John Racer is there. Racer's there, and so is Fox. It is on for P1 in this class. Here it is. This is Nicole Fox right in front, or excuse me, right behind, I should say,
And
of
now
Johnny
Nicole's
Racer.
getting feisty. She can see
Yep,
first.
yep, she sure is. She wants it. She says, well, Tom Shipston's right there. I haven't had a podium all season. I know how to win here, says Nicole Fox. I'm going to go get me some of this. And also being held down, of course, by Austin, slowing the field up. But even still, even before Shipston caught the back of Kuzma, and I'm pretty sure Fox was still gaining in the next round racing McLaren. A couple of cars have pitted already. Obviously, the 123, who was the leader, not the pole sitter in the silver class, but took the lead and then had their issues. Mullard has also pitted, and a couple of extra penalties. And Nico Kuzma trying to go around the outside and gets as close as you like. Maybe a little bit of a tap, and Austin's holds on yet again. Shipston looks to the inside every time that happens, but I don't know how serious of a challenge that is. What I was going to say, Nicole!
Yeah, but she's kept it good though. Went off the circuit but didn't pin the throttle down, just made sure to ease off and bring the car back on, and had to avoid going into the back of John Racer. And I think that's the problem that Nicole Fox has been in so far during this race. She's quicker than John Racer, but just having to sit behind the McLaren at this point, that will give Shipston some breathing room. Kuzma has pitted to try and find some clean air, has probably realized that if he's going to get past Austin's, he's going to have to do it on the undercut, and might not be a bad decision. Kingston Lee's been passed by Yan Yeo, and it looks like is that the likes of Nico Kumpu going to try and follow through. Doesn't quite get the chance to do so. Is going to look at the inside line for Druids, but Kingston Lee's got that one car.
Yan Yeo has been sort of silent and quiet this race, no longer that way, fighting for a spot inside the top 10. What I was going to say, as Kuzma, Van Kampen, and Knight are all in the pit lane for their mandatory stop, what I was going to talk about was the fact that Martin Lawrence, who was trying to get by Kingston Lee and has since then, has a 5-second penalty. And if we look at our penalty report, that is for 5-second penalty for the 171 back on lap 8, turn 1. The contact caused by the 171 correcting oversteer forced the 256 off of the racing surface. Additionally, there was a warning for car 970 for trying to dive and go deep into the corner, resulting in contact with the 127. A warning for car 66 for contact between themselves and the 77. Stewards note the 66 should be more aware of its surroundings during overtaking. And additionally, a bunch of racing incidents between the 750, the 7 and the 555, the 555 and the 47, and the 47 and the 555. I know that last one was not a repeat. Those were two separate incidents on two separate laps.
Now, if you're Tom Shipston, you're in an awkward situation here, aren't you? Because you have Daniel Austin's ahead, the championship leader in Pro, that's not having a particularly great race. You've got John Racer right behind you, who John Racer hasn't really had much to look forward to so far in this race, but he can smell blood in the water now, with Austin's being, particularly slower than expected. And of course, the problem for Shipston is that Nicole Fox was right on the back of a racer. She's not on the back of a racer at the moment. He goes up the inside, though. He's going to have a look on Austin's. Austin's not having any of it, though. And you can start to sense the desperation for Shipston now, because look at that. Nicole Fox went off. She lost time, but she's catching back up to this. Even she's quicker than the championship leader in Pro at the moment. It seems like everyone's quicker than Austin's at the moment, and everyone's just grouping back up again. And right now, if you're the one car sat behind Austin's in this train at the moment, you're the desperate one to get through and get ahead, because if you have that clean air, you can start to build the gap. Look at Borkman. He's gone. He's disappeared.
Smart move there by Austin's, getting into the pit lane, and we saw something rare you don't usually see. Tom Shipston up to P3 for the moment. You saw two different class leaders, the championship leader in Pro and Silver, both racing each other on the racetrack. You rarely get to see something like that, but we did get to see that on that occasion, at least for a couple of laps, but broken up by the pit stop by Austin's, and that was the best of both worlds. Austin's gets to come in, they get to work on the car like you said earlier. That might be a tire pressure issue. I don't think it's anything particularly wrong with that race car. other than maybe that, hopefully able to work on it, make some adjustments, find a little bit of speed in the car. And for everybody else, it's a blessing as well, because that will release Shipston to Razor, and that will certainly hurt Nicole Fox in the 314, because they were catching up quite handily, tenths every sector. And I wonder if maybe that slows down a little bit, but don't overlook John Eraser in the 4th place position, because they're still right there, and they could give Shipston a headache as well. Austin's rejoining there. It's not Austin's fault. That's just how pit lane is.
No, but the important thing is there that Nico Charisma and Mullard both pitted to get the undercut and see if they could jump ahead of Daniel Austin's. That's exactly what they've done. So that free air that they had has come in really, really nicely for them, and they've managed to jump ahead of the full 1-3. And you kind of get the feeling for Austin's at the moment that this is just going to get worse and worse. He's just going to keep losing pace. But now we have an interesting development here because of Nicole Fox's mistake. Ethan Scott was catching up very close to the back end of the McLaren of the 314 of Nicole Fox at that point. But we have, Jesse Lee, all 3 of our podium sitters in the silver class within about 3 seconds of each other at the moment. Obviously, Shipston now released to try and, build up that gap, has a 2.2 second gap over Nicole Fox at this point in time. But Ethan Scott, who's maybe going a bit quicker than Nicole Fox now, might want to find a way through and see if he can catch the leader.
I wonder at what point Ethan Scott thinks about coming down the pit lane. Certainly, if Scott thinks that they're quicker than Fox, of course, Scott has to beat Shipston today. I think we all agree, to have a legitimate shot at the championship win at Donington Park next week. Scott needs to beat him. He doesn't have to win the race, so to speak, does Ethan Scott, but needs to beat Shipston. And unfortunately, I think today, to finish in front of Shipston, they're going to have to win that silver class. And I just wonder what Scott does here. If I'm being held up by Fox, and Fox is losing time to Shipston, which it looks like it is, it was 1 point something last lap, it's 2.2 the last sector time, and now it's 2.3 in the previous sector time. I start thinking about it if I'm Scott coming in, and that's exactly what he's done.
So Ethan Scott comes in, strategic move to maybe see if they can get some clean air and jump ahead of Nicole Fox. Of course, that strategy works if you can get the clean air, Jesse Lee. It's not always so easy, though, is it? We've seen plenty of occasions before where drivers have pitted early, they've come out behind drivers that haven't done their pit stop, and it hasn't paid off for them at all because they've been stuck behind them, they've wasted time, and on some occasions they, can't get past them, and of course it hurts them even more. So it is a very, very big gamble, and sometimes it's better to, pit immediately if you can get that free air, or go as long as you can to guarantee that you're not going to have anyone that you're stuck behind. And, well, Nicole Fox seems to be playing the long game at the moment and hoping that Ethan Scott's going to get caught up behind some traffic. And looking at the track map there as Ethan Scott comes out, looks like he is going to be caught up behind some drivers.
Well, fortunately, got out right in front of is that Bart Macha's car? It is Bart Macha's car. So gets out in front of Bart Macha here. So that might be just the silver lining. Has to get those tires back up to racing temperature. Will be a bit slow here, at least for the first part of the lap. You can see the difference between warm tires and cold tires. Even if he didn't change tires, the tires still cool off in the pit lane.
Ooh, Nicole Fox in, by the way.
Nicole Fox is in. So certainly
she's responded then.
Yep, the next round racing driver in the pit lane. So is Jan Yao in the 48. We'll see what that looks like around, I suspect, at very least, it'll go back to the way it was. But I wonder if maybe Scott is able just to pour a little bit more into this lap, dig a little bit, only needed about a 10th over the course of the in-lap, the out-lap, and the pit stop.
Yeah, we'll have to see exactly how all that works out, and of course it can come down to just who does better on the pit stops, and your pit entry, your pit exit, your hitting the marks can be so important in situations like this, but we'll see how it all plays out. Here is Nico Charisma, though, still chasing down Mullard at this point. I'm watching Nicole Fox coming out of pit lane at the moment, and I think Nicole Fox going to be ahead. Looks like Nicole Fox is still ahead. Yeah, still ahead of Ethan Scott. So Ethan Scott pitted, and Nicole Fox reacting immediately has guaranteed at least that she'll stay ahead of him for the time being. In fact, even gapped him slightly as well. So it would seem that that Ethan Scott has lost a bit of time on that as well. I'm checking the pit stop times at this point. Ethan Scott's was 0.6 of a second slower stationary than Nicole Fox. And well, when you're 0.6 of a second stationary, Jesse Lee, that means a lot more than 0.6 on the circuit, because of course Nicole Fox is going at racing speed.
It certainly does, and the race leader is in the pit lane. Vincey Rayshunov in the 24. We haven't talked much about Vincey today, doing exactly what they need to do. They need to win this race and make it pretty much a dead heat, winner-take-all in the final round by our math here in the booth. And he's done pretty much everything. Qualified on pole, he's taken fastest lap thus far, and he's looking like the man to beat. Had 16+ seconds when he came in to serve his mandatory pit stop. That will hand the lead over to Andy Boardman, the 66 McLaren, leading Tom Shipston, who is yet to pit. A penny for Shipston's thoughts right now of how this race has went. Was on pole, lost the lead on that opening lap, I should say. Got it back, got ran down by two drivers. Now, with everybody but him that he's racing having pitted, you have to be wondering what's going through his mind. Is going long here the right decision? Well, we don't know either. We're going to have to see when they come back around. Martin Lawrence, of course, P3 right now, the CLR driver in the old Bentley, the 2015 version of that car. Keep in mind, in this championship, all of the British manufacturers are legal, including the Jag. Nobody selected the Jag for somewhat obvious reasons, I think we would say, Gil, but it does make me and Ryan Mawson, our broadcaster, sad. We would have loved to have seen that Jag.
Over here
from the Jag just... listen, I can make an argument. It's really quick in a straight line. It makes a lovely noise, and it's a Jag.
But the problem is, when you come up to a corner, which circuit like Brands Hatch has a few tricky ones, doesn't quite work out so much. But, well, Alan Knight in the McLaren at the moment, it does deal with the corners fairly well, and he's going to try and use that to try and get past the Bentley of Ribicki at the moment in the 127, and Alan Knight all over the back end of the Bentley at the moment, going to try on the inside. No, cuts back in. That was close to the back end, and you always have those moments, Jesse, where you're convinced a driver is going to run into the back of someone and they don't, and you have to question how on earth they didn't collide.
Professionals, that's all I got to say. That nobody comes out here and wants to run up people's backsides and create contact and get penalties. Nobody wants to make mistakes. Nobody wants to impact anybody else's race. It is, by definition, accidents. But to your credit, every time they run from Paddock Hill to Druids, I think there's going to be contact every single time, and there almost never is. They have the braking and the gear shift rhythm down to a science, and it just works. The Grease Weasel Racing driver in the 66 McLaren, Andy Boardman, has yielded the lead of the race. That will hand the lead over to the best name in sim racing. I'm not biased, don't at me. Matthew Kingston Lee, Nico Kumpu, Sutcliffe,
I still stand by Billy Octane.
Kiyakowski. Well, if his name was Billy Octane Lee, yes, that would absolutely be the undisputed best name in sim racing. Billy, if you're out there, still not too late to change your name by default. But a couple of cars still left to pit. Only two now, Kingston Lee and Kumpu, because Boardman, Sutcliffe, and Kiyakowski are all in. That should hand third place, and already has done, over to Rayshunov. Crazy race we've had, still not done yet. Still 25 minutes to go. Feels like we've been going for an hour, the rate these guys have been racing. Out into traffic, does Boardman go? A little bit of contact there with Austin's.
Yeah, and that's not going to be good for Austin, so dropping back even further now into the clutches of Shipston. And, well, with the silver class, something we haven't quite mentioned is that things have changed around a bit. Shipston has remained in the lead after the pit stops phase, but Jake Boswell has done a masterclass in the pit stops. He's jumped up into second place through the pit stops. He was much, much quicker than the likes of Shipston. I would have to think that Shipston has taken tyres and Jake Boswell hasn't. So Jake Boswell's jumped up to second. McLaughlin is up into third. So Nicole Fox, unfortunately, outside of the podium positions now, and has to try and chase down the McLaren. Doing so at this point in time, you can just see the number 7 ahead of the 314. And don't forget Ethan Scott in that battle as well. He's just closing in on the back, and it's John Eraser again that finds himself as a little bit of a cork in the bottle for some quicker silver drivers. But this time, Nicole Fox will be relishing John Aracer being stuck in front of the number 7 McLaren, because that's a podium position she can see right in front of her.
Question from the chat, Shortmaster, something that I often refer to myself as outside of commentary, ask what nationality Nicole Fox was, because there's a South African radio DJ by the same name. Yes, Nicole Fox is a German driver, and quite a good one at that. Well, we've seen what's happened with the cycle of pit stops. Rachanov will eventually, we assume, cycle back to the lead.
What's happened to Ethan Scott? He's disappeared.
Something has happened to the 34 down in 15th place. That can only mean one thing. There has been some sort of accident.
I was going to say, I think Ethan Scott's had a little bit of an adventure somewhere, and he hasn't been back down pit lane because he would have lost a lot more time than that. So Ethan Scott potentially just making a mistake at some point somewhere. I'm not sure if we have potential footage of that. It's one of the unfortunate things, is that sometimes we just don't get the footage of some of the self-inflicted incidents.
I'm forced to believe that that was self-inflicted indeed by Ethan Scott, the 34, and we'll update you on what happened to the 34 whenever we get information in. The best name in sim racing is down the pit lane. The 555 pits out of second place. That will hand second back over to Rachanov, who we continue to see gap the field, though it is down. It was 16.5 seconds prior to the pit stop. Ben Mullard in the 77 McLaren has got it down to 15.5, but it's not all peachy keen in the Mullard stable, because they have a 5-second penalty. Speaking of penalties, no further action between the 66 and the 413 for earlier contact. Racing incident between the 413 and the 12. Racing incident between the 12 and the 413. They've been side by side a lot thus far, can you tell? Racing incident between the 5 and the 77, and a 5-second penalty for car 77 for an overtake with contact on car number 5. That happened on lap 18, turn 1.
Car number 5, that's Bot Matcher, I believe, and that will be interesting, because that will be Mullard getting past Bart Matcher, probably full position, but back when Bart Matcher had done his mandatory pit stop, so a bit concerning there for Mullard, and we'll have to kind of live on with that 5-second penalty. But something I've kind of seen here, Jesse Lee, after the pit stops phase, does Daniel Austin's kind of look like he's found a second wind here? On the back of the likes of Andy Boardman, was, all over the back of him, now sits about half a second, I think it's just over that at the moment, away from Andy Boardman, but seems to have got a bit of a second win. Maybe come in and, got a new set of tyres on. Maybe it has helped with whatever issue he was encountering in that. He sits 6th place at the moment. He should be up to 5th when Nico Kumpu comes into the pit lane and serves their mandatory pit stop. And with that penalty that Mullard has got, they could even find themselves back up into the top 4, which would be very, very good for them if, their worst result of the season could be limited to a top 4. They do have Shipston on the back of them, and that's Nicole Fox.
Well, they've gone around in Graham Hill Bend. Let's take a race replay, show you what happened to the next round racing driver. Just lost it on corner entry. So easy to do in Graham Hill Bend. Trying to get all the braking while downshifting, and it just goes wrong. Car goes sideways. Luckily, no additional contact. They'll be able to continue. But did you see what I saw? Yes, you did, because we're looking at it again. This is Laurie McLaughlin in P3 in the silver class. But look who's in front of them. That's Jedi Jake the Bosmeister Boswell.
Yeah, and the important thing to note in this battle is that Laurie McLaughlin took tyres at the pit stop. Jake Boswell didn't, so that McLaren is on a fresh set of rubber from when it did its pit stop, whereas Jake Boswell's tyres have gone from the start of the race to now, so they might be hurting a little bit more. The Bentley is, of course, good on its tyres, but it's, you'd be hard-pressed to tell me that a McLaren on 10 minutes of tyres is going to be worse than a Bentley on 40 minutes of tyres, so it would seem at the moment that the McLaren has the advantage on pace, but Jake Boswell's not going to be an easy driver to get past, and he's driving for this 2nd place here today. He wants this. It's going to be a good result for his season. and he's not going to give it up easily.
Well, Jake Boswell, I was talking to him quite recently, in fact, was frustrated with a lot of the finishes that he had recently had. He certainly won't be frustrated with this one. This is the Jedi Jake we all know and love, who has so very often crept into the picture and taken victory away from everyone else. And today was one of those days. We saw him creeping in earlier inside the top 5 in silver, maybe working on 4th, but now all the way up to 2nd place. That was a brilliant sequence of stops that has put the 47 in this position, also capitalizing on everybody else's misfortune. We saw Nicole Fox have their issues. McLaughlin's back in this race as well for P3. Shipston, who is on the back of Austin still. Keep in mind, that's how they came into the pit lane, Shipston and Austin's, nose to tail, albeit a little bit further up the field, I might add. But besides that, they're still trying to figure it out, the 2 championship leaders. I wonder if Austin's finishes 5th today, this will take place of their drop round. Would that mean Rachanov, with the win, the fastest lap, and the pole, would that be enough to give him the championship lead? It would be oh so tight.
Well, if Rachanov comes away today with the pole position win and fastest lap, which is looking ever more likely at the moment, they will walk away with a grand total of 39 points. Now, if Austin's finishes in 5th place, I think they'll bump up to 4th though, Jesse, because of Mullard's penalty at the moment. They are within that 5-second gap right now. So if we look at them being in 4th place, that's going to be, I believe, an 18-point difference between the likes of what Rachanov will take home and what Austin's will take home. There's a 6-point difference between them. So it could be, going into the final round of the season, that Rachanov ends up leading by 12 points as it stands. So it's a big moment for Austin's at the moment. If he's got that car going again, if he's found the pace, he needs to try and claw back some positions before the end of this race to try and nullify the lead that Rachanov could take into the 90-minute finale at Donington next week.
And folks, you're not going to want to miss that 90-minute finale in 1 week's time. Should be Ryan Gill and John Dalton, with Ryan Mawson on the cameras for you for that finale. I might not be here in the booth like I have been the majority of this season, but I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to be sitting in those stands, and I'm going to be watching that race, and you should as well. Remember, like, subscribe, hit the bell so you don't miss a single race. You're not going to want to miss the finale of this. It's been a long season, 6 rounds. It's felt like it's taken forever to get to this point, but there's just been so much racing action, so many races that have had split-second changes near the ends of them, and could this be another one of those? Nico Kuizma trying to get by Mullard. Boardman wants to get back. Remember when Boardman was looking likely to take 2nd place? Somehow he's back in 4th place now. It's just crazy stuff. And look at this. They're basically every lap testing the track limits, racing each other to the absolute limit. If they keep this up, Austin's and the like of Tom Shipston are going to be back in this mix. And if Shipston gets held up again, could that erase the gap back to a racer? And Jake Boswell, Kuzma goes off the track there a little bit.
Yeah, and that's going to allow Boardman to take the position, so that puts him back up into the podium places, although Kuizma doesn't look like it's going to give it up easily. He's going to stay on the inside line. They're going to go down towards Paddock Hill Bend side by side. This is not what you want to do. You don't want to be on the outside line here, and Kuizma is going to take it back. Boardman thinks better of it. He's not going to try and go around the outside.
Twitches.
But here comes Austin's as well, by the way. He smells blood in the water, and Boardman getting ever so close.
Shipston's back
in the back. And like you said, Jesse Lee Austin's off the track pretty much to try and get past Boardman. Unbelievable. And flashing at the lights of Daniel Austin's to say to Boardman that wasn't on. I think Andy Boardman might return the flash at him and didn't say, well, you were off the track.
Oh, Tom Shipston has to have, I hope he doesn't have anxiety, because it would be going off right now. That's close as
His
Shipston
team manager
is.
will have anxiety.
I know, like, oh my goodness, they're going to take some Tums or something. It just, we were an absolute A4 sheet of paper away from a big accident that might have involved our silver leader. It would have changed everything in the silver championship if he would have had a big accident there. Shipston, though, has been driving like a man that's fearless, and sometimes That's what you need. You need that championship mentality of I'm the best, nobody's going to beat me. I'm going to get up there and I'm going to compete with anybody. I don't even care if it's in my class. Shipston's got that attitude, he's got that swag, and he's showing it off today.
Seen a few people in the chat talking about the drop round and what it exactly means. I was going to get into that explanation earlier. There's contact
As well.
McLaughlin and Jake Boswell have come together, and is that Jake Boswell into the wall? I'm not entirely sure. But we're going to have a little bit of a replay here. Will this exactly reveal what happened? Jake Boswell was on the outside, got a bit of a scruffy exit, and oh, that Bentley is into the barrier.
Crash.
That
Huge crash, Jake
and
Boswell.
that's going to be race over. That Bentley is back into the pit lane. I think that's going to be garage down on the door for that car, unfortunately. And Jake Boswell sitting in second place, doing so well to defend, and now it's all come to griefs. And here is Nico Quisman trying to find another way through on Mullard. Doesn't necessarily need to, but Boardman comes around and there's a bit of contact, and now Boardman's going to try and get back up into the top three. Quisman's off. Is this the chance that Austin's needs to go back into the top four?
It is all kicking off. What was the battle in the first 15 is back again in the final 15. Man, what racing. Tom Shipston doing everything they can. This is caught up, or could be catching up some of the cars behind them, but hasn't shown that thus far. Racer still losing time. Obviously, with Jake Boswell's incident, that has taken them completely out of this fight and potentially out of the entire race. One of the nastiest crashes you will ever see into the pit lane barriers.
Yeah, so unfortunately for Jake Boswell, that is race over, and he'll be very frustrated about that. And well, now things have changed for the likes of Daniel Austins, has moved himself up into fourth place, and with that penalty for Mullard, that technically puts Austins on the podium, Jesse, and that can change the entire dynamic of how this championship has gone so far.
I forgot about
him.
that.
because Mullard's still got that 5-second penalty, so Austin's worst result could still be a podium this season, even after all the struggle that he's been through so far in this race, with his car losing pace in the first half of the race. He's managed to claw it back. Now he's managed to take advantage of some other misfortune, and now he's back on the podium. And well, who knows, if things could go awry for Andy Boardman, it could get even better for Daniel Austins. The one thing is to reckon of, though, is that he stayed clean all race. He still has the fastest lap. He's still got those pole position points, and he looks like he's pretty much going to have a clean run to the finish as long as he can keep his car on the road.
One thing I just want to point out, we are not watching a replay. This is live action. Our graphics have become affixed to the screen. I think they've melted into the screen because of this red hot racing action that we've seen thus far. There it is, finally getting cleared off there. I think things cooled down a little bit in the control room and we're back to normal, but for how long? 10.5 minutes of racing left. No battle out front. Vincey Rachanov has done an excellent job. They qualified on pole. They've driven away from this field. Mullard, even if he gets there, not a real threat because of the 5-second penalty. What does that do behind them? Well, that basically bumps Mullard off of the podium spots because Boardman and Austins, well, as you can see from the visuals here, are right on the back of him. Mullard needs a gap. I don't think he's going to get there. Andy Boardman looking to take back what he certainly feels is rightfully his, i.e. second place. Austins somehow, with all of the troubles, with all of the issues that AMR Daniel sim racing car has had today, they're still in a hunt for a podium. Like you said, Gil, they're probably still going to get a podium. Excellent defense. Rachanov may win this race, but for me, for grit and determination, Daniel Austins has got to be my driver today.
Yeah, it looks like this championship well and truly going to come down to the wire in the pro class. Shipston looks like, well, with every lap, he's going to wrap up the silver class, maybe not entirely mathematically in this round, but he's going to go into the final round at Donington Park with a significant lead over second place in silver. And for him, that will be a fantastic thing to do, to go into the final round knowing that he doesn't need to get a fantastic result. He kind of just needs to come home and get a decent result. Someone who is benefiting from some misfortune, though, Nicole Fox was in fourth place. after her spin and, well, behind, no, it wasn't behind Ethan Scott, because Ethan Scott had his own set of problems earlier on in the race, but because of Jake Boswell's retirement, that's now bumped up the 314 into the podium places, so Nicole Fox could get that first podium of the season that she's been looking for so far, and wouldn't she love that going into the final round at Donington Park as well. But here is Andy Boardman. Doesn't need to retake this on track, Jesse Lee. But as a racing driver, you kind of just want to do it anyway because you can, and we can see that Laurie McLaughlin has got a drive-through penalty courtesy of the incident that they caused Jake Boswell. And that will put Nicole Fox up into second place in silver, and Ethan Scott back on the podium.
I do beg your pardon. I reacted like that was out of the blue, but I do now remember the vicious accident that happened right at pit in. So yeah, I think as you say, a slam dunk there. Also, no further action between the 66 and the 413. Racing incidents between the 35, the 127, the 127, the 64, and the 12 and the 60. Most of the things coming down to that, and then you have this.
And this is Andy Boardman making his way past on Ben Mullard. So that is it. Andy Boardman's got the place done. He didn't need to take the place, but maybe concerned about the resurgent pace of Daniel Austin's. And now this is the thing. Daniel Austin's still sitting in third place because of Mullard, but he'll want to try and get past Mullard now and maybe see, maybe if he has the pace, try and get Boardman as well. It would be a miracle job for Austin's to get a second place at this point in time. But you know what, Jesse? It's 7.5 minutes. It's Brands Hatch. Anything can happen. And this race has been anything but predictable.
It sure has. Interesting comments from the chat. Forget F1. This has been way more fun. I've said that about GT racing for pretty much the entire time. Modern GT racing has been a thing. You put 20 cars on a racetrack, all in different cars, pretty much similar skill level, I think we'll all agree, and it all kicks off. Brands Hatch always delivers as well. What a brilliant racing circuit. It boggles my mind why anybody would want to build a modern racing circuit when you have tracks like this that set the example of how good racing can be. Daniel Austin's will likely equal his worst finish of the season, if you can believe that, P3. He's not finished any worse than that, but he might do here today. But even still, you have to admire everything that Austin's has been through today to still be in this conversation. I'm pretty sure I'm right in thinking that you and I both thought maybe a top 5 for Austin's today, but everybody else having their issues, everybody else falling by the wayside. Steady, calm, and sometimes defensive driving from Austin's has led him into this position. We talked earlier about Boardman getting by Mullard, how it didn't actually matter if he did it or not. He was going to get the position, but we know Andy Boardman a little bit better than that. We had to know that position change was coming. But what about Shipston right now, Gil? Will Shipston make a move on Austin's here?
Yeah, Shipston, I'm not sure if he'll make a move on Austin's, but one thing for sure is that Nico Kuzma could be making a move on Shipston, and that would be something, if I was Shipston, I'd be a bit concerned about. I know there's always pride in, finishing in front of drivers that are in a, higher class than you, drivers that are quicker than you. There's, plenty of pride to be gained from that. But Shipston, look at the gap he's got between the rest of the silver podium. He doesn't need this stress. He doesn't need to risk this. He can easily let Kuzma through. And yeah, this is Bart Matcher in the old 650S. Shipston doesn't need this, right? He doesn't need this risk. He doesn't need the potential problems that could come. If there's an accident in front of him, he could get caught up in this and it could turn the whole thing on its head. But right now, it doesn't seem like he's keen to move over at all. And here, this is something that Mullard will be absolutely livid about. Bart Matcher is just holding him up a little bit now. Daniel Austin's will be thinking, yep, keep going, McLaren, keep going. This is what I need. This is the chance that I need to try and get past Ben Mullard, but the 650S of Bart Matcher will pull over to the side. Something I did consider, Jesse, that there are two things about this championship battle between Austin's as he goes off, but will rejoin ahead of Shipston. There's two things about this championship battle in Pro that absolutely amaze me. One is that Daniel Austin's having a podium in every single round of the season so far could go into the final round not in the lead of the championship. The other thing that amazes me is that Rakhimov could go into the final round in the lead of the championship, having not dominated as much as Daniel Austin's has.
Yeah, 100%, and that's the nature of the drop round. You take the drop round out of it, and then it looks completely different.
Drivers.
Yeah, in two different ways. You can get to a championship many different ways. Everyone always has arguments of how you win championships, how you get to this point. You have to be consistent. No, you have to win the most. The correct answer is you can do either. Obviously, you want to do both, but you can do either. The last championship that I covered was completely different than this. If you had finished every race on the podium, by the end of it, you were guaranteed the championship. That's how that worked out, okay? This is different. You've had two drivers. One has had extreme highs, but also a couple of really bad lows. The other one has had just a pretty even keel through the entire championship. Both has got themselves into this situation. Look at that defending right there. Mullard was not letting Austin's have that.
No, definitely not. But Austin's wants it, you know. He's really, really eager to get past Mullard. I don't think there's going to be any opportunity for him to catch up to Andy Boardman, but, you know, he's just got to keep believing. He'll want to get past Mullard just to say that he could do it as well if the penalty wasn't there, just to prove that he could earn that podium spot back. And we're on board here with Shipston now, just watching all of this unfold. Here comes the Aston Martin. It's a scruffy exit for Mullard. It's going to be the Aston Martin of Austin's on the outside line. Is he going to go around the outside of Paddock Hill Bend? I don't think there's going to be the grip there for him to do it. No, and he's losing the and this is going to be Kuisma.
Getting off!
Get back, he will!
Oh my goodness! Losing several positions. Nico Kuisma goes through as well as Tom Shipston, but the two cars that were fighting each other are going to still end up in the same configuration they were before they got into that mess. Mullard's going to be furious. Not only have they lost a shot at a podium spot via the penalty, they might lose a chance to finish inside the top 5, and I think they already have done. They're P6. That's put Nico Kuisma up into P3. It's Rachinov, Boardman, and Kuisma now, the top 3. Shipston somehow, who I thought was the biggest issue going into Paddock Hill Bend that time through, somehow came through with that, smelling completely of roses. How did that happen? Shipston either is the luckiest human being I've ever seen or the smartest driver, and I'm not on their level. I have no idea.
They say to win a championship, you don't just need talent on your side, you need luck as well, and Shipston definitely had some luck in there, but my word, what a moment that happened there. And Daniel Austin's was on the podium, Jesse Lee. They had that 3rd place. They had Shipston behind them. They didn't need to worry. They didn't need to take the risk. They didn't need to pass Mullard. But they tried to go for it, and it did not work out. And all it's resulted in is Austin's is off the podium. It doesn't look like it's going to happen. And it's an advantage even further now towards the number 24. And if Daniel Austin is going to fight back at Donington Park in a week's time to win this championship, my word, is he going to have to fight hard for it, because Rakinov will be grinning from ear to ear at the end of this race, knowing that Daniel Austin's almost got back onto the podium, but was denied through his own mistake as well. And speaking of the race leader,
one more lap.
We haven't seen too much of him, but he's going to make us go one more lap around this place. To be fair, he could have slowed down enough to stop the race, but at this point, why not just do one more, just to keep things on our toes?
I think that's called a victory lap in the business, Ryan, and why not? I can't wait to hear that last bit back on the VOD. We do apologize if you couldn't hear any commentary from us during that Graham Hill Bend incident, but Ryan Gill and I have called a lot of races together, and for us both to get that hyped, you can imagine how incredible that was to us. I think if this was subtitled, it would just be unintelligible, I think, Ryan, is what they would call that commentary. But fantastic stuff right to the last lap of the race. The only thing I worry about at this stage is hoping everybody has enough fuel. Just very quickly before we wrap up here, of course, there were some penalties that came out. Of course, we saw the 77 with the 5-second penalty. They've been carrying almost the entire second half of the race. There's also a 5-second penalty for Sutcliffe, and Rybecki has got themselves a drive-through penalty. Now, they've elected to take this. They didn't have to. They could have taken this as a time penalty coming across the line because there wasn't enough laps to you're allowed 3 laps to serve it. They didn't have that. They could have crossed the line and got a time penalty. They've elected to serve it on this occasion. Can't say enough about Vincey Rayshonov. Did exactly what they had to do today. So did Tom Shipston. Brilliant race.
Well, Rashidov comes across the line and takes the win, and with that should take the championship lead as well. Andy Boardman, my word, has this man had to fight for his second place, but I have to say, deserves every bit of it. And Andy Boardman comes across the line. He will take second place, and it's Tom Shipston that's going to come across the line and take the win in silver. Nico Kuzma will round out the pro podium, but it is the Ground Zero racing car that will put themselves on the top step of the silver podium again this season. They will pretty much wrap up the silver standings. And Nicole Fox, by the way, across the line, takes their first podium this season in silver. It's a second place to boot. And Ethan Scott puts themselves on the third spot of the rostrum as well, for good measure. And my word, Jesse Lee, it has been a race that had pretty much everything in it. There was drama, there was incidents, there was incredible overtakes, and there was so much going on. And I have to say, when people say that, you know, Brands Hatch is a circuit where overtaking is difficult, and it's a circuit where, you know, great racing is often difficult to provide because of that challenging, you know, ability to overtake, I think we'll just have to show them this broadcast from now on, won't we?
Well, I agree with that first part of that sentiment. Overtaking here is very difficult, or difficile, if you will. But what I also will say is that second part is absolute nonsense. This place is an action track and it puts on a show every single time. Watch any race here. Doesn't matter. I'll wait. And it's always the same. It's madness since the green flag to the checkered flag. Big shout out, of course, to Boardman. That was a battle tested P2. Nicole Fox as well had a couple of issues today, bounced back to P2 in the silver class as well. And through all of that, we had a fantastic race. Ethan Scott finished third, not out of it in the silver championship either.
No, not out of it, but of course we'll have a lot of work to do at the 90-minute finale at Donington Park. But of course, 90 minutes, anything can happen, especially at a circuit like Donington Park. And, well, it's going to be absolutely fantastic to cover that finale in just a week's time. And we hope that all of you will join us for that finale. We see the cars streaming into the pit lane now. They'll all be heading off to Parc Ferme, and Tom Shipston taking a rather adventurous way into the pit lane, courtesy of Martin Lawrence as well there. I think he missed the pit entry. And, we've got, I believe that's Nico Kumpu, is it? Just going for a few drifts around the final corner and putting on a bit of a show for some of the fans out here, although they've had plenty of a show already for this evening. But my word, what an incredible race it has been. And do make sure to join us in a week's time for the finale. Donington Park, 90 minutes. Anything could happen in that race. You will not want to miss it. It will be Rakhimov versus Austin's for the championship in Pro. Aston Martin versus McLaren. It doesn't get much better than that, Jesse.
No, it sure doesn't. It's going to be a straight up fight, folks. You're definitely not going to want to miss that. Basically, according to my math, and I have been doing the math as you might expect for what it's worth, it should be a straight fight. Whoever beats the other car next week should, in theory, win the championship. 90 minutes to decide a champion in Pro. Again, I might not be beside you next week, Mr. Gill, but I'll definitely be in the stands to watch it.
Yeah, and I definitely recommend that everyone be in the stands to watch it as well. But a big thank you tonight to our partners that make all the racing here at RCI possible. Race Department for getting us up and off our feet initially when we got RCI running up as a community. You can check out their page for all the best sim racing news and AC1 mods. Also some other mods from plenty of other games as well. It's like almost a #1 stop shop for mods. AK Informatica, of course, all of our races are run on their servers. So, of course, we do thank them greatly for providing that to us. Driver 61, if you want to win like Rakinov, well, you can get some coaching with their Sim Racing Academy. It costs only $10 to access to get some coaching from some of the best in the sim racing business. And you can get 25% off with our discount code in the description below. You should know enough about Fanatec as it is, but if you're interested in getting some top tier sim racing equipment and on a budget too with the CSL DD now out, you can do that at Fanatec. Use our affiliate link in the description below to support RCI at no extra cost. And Sim Racing GP, if you're looking for racing on different platforms like Race Room, iRacing, Assetto Corsa, and many more in the future, then check out Sim Racing GP and find a community to get started today. And just as we have been going through this, Jesse Lee, I have been calculating the points on a calculator. We'll have Daniel Austin's heading into the final round of the season. So he has 102 points going into this round. He'll take away a 4th place today, so that means he'll gain 21 points. He'll sit on. He would, in theory, sit on 123. However, he's not going to have 123 because of his drop round, which is the 21 points that he picked up today, which is his worst result of the season. So he still sits on 102 points that he was on earlier. So that won't change too much for him. What will change for Vichy Rakinov, actually, no, he won't sit on 102 points. My math is slightly off there because the 3rd place finish that he got in round 2, which I believe was at Silverstone, Jesse Lee, if you can correct me. I believe you were covering that one. So Austin's will go up to 127 points. That's the amount of points he will sit on so far this season. But then you have Rakinov, who is currently on 96 points going into this round. He'll have 3 points is his worst result of the season. He's obviously beaten that here today, so he goes down to 93 points. And then, of course, you add the 39. He's on 132. So it's about a 7-point differential that we have between the two championship protagonists going into the final round of the season. And, well, in a week's time, we'll be here to do it all over again. So do make sure to join us. We will see you next time here on RCI TV. Look forward to all the racing we have up here for the rest of the week. We have races on Thursday and Saturday coming up as well with the GT4 Championship and the Night Owl Championship. But we look forward to seeing you in a week's time for the finale at Donington Park.